Hey everyone, today I'm going to do an overview of warrior tanks in Phase 1 of Season of Discovery. We'll look at runes, gear, talents, and spells to paint a full picture of what warrior tanks will look like at level 25. Keep in mind, I haven't actually played a warrior in Season of Discovery, so there's going to be a lot of speculation. Let's first look at runes. In case you're unfamiliar, runes are new spells and passives that you put on an item of a specific slot. The rune slots available in Phase 1 are chest, legs, and hands. There are several runes for each of these rune slots, but you can only have one rune active at a time per rune slot. In the chest rune slot, warriors have four options. The first is Blood Frenzy, giving you 3 rage every time you deal bleed damage. I don't think this is going to be used much unless you're deep wound spec. Another option is Flagellation, which is probably going to be used a lot. This will give you 25% increased physical damage for 12 seconds after using Blood Rage or Berserker Rage. We won't actually have Berserker Rage until Phase 2, but being able to start every pull with 25% increased damage from Blood Rage will be really valuable. Raging Blow is another option. This is an ability that deals 100% weapon damage, costs no rage, and has an 8-second cooldown, but it's only usable while you have Enrage, Blood Rage, or Berserker Rage active. Fury has some great talents for warriors if we don't need the extra survivability from Prot, and we're able to get 1 point in Enrage if we put all our points into Fury. So Raging Blow could potentially be useful. The last option is Warbringer, which you'll recognize from Wrath if you've played that. This allows you to use Charge, Intercept, and Intervene in any stance, and using one of these abilities will also remove movement impairing effects. In Phase 1, we'll only have Charge, but this rune will be a must-have anytime mobility is important. Intervene wasn't even originally an ability in Classic, so it's unclear when we'll actually get that, but we'll get Intercept in Phase 2. I'm looking at Flagellation and Warbringer as the top 2 choices in the chest rune slot that I'll change around based on what I'm doing. Next up are the hand runes. We're going to start off with an absolute banger here, Devastate. If you've played TBC or Wrath Warrior, you'll recognize this. It's going to cause your Sunder Armor to deal 100% weapon damage and an additional 10% damage per stack of Sunder Armor on the target. This is just an amazing ability dealing high threat and damage while also applying an important debuff. Note that it does require you to be in defensive stance and have a shield equipped to use it. Endless Rage is another option in this slot that increases rage generation from damage you deal by 25%, but I can't imagine using this over Devastate. Quick Strike is a new instant attack with no cooldown, but only usable when a two-hander is equipped. In Classic, warriors typically tank lower level stuff with two-handers, but this could change based on how they tune Season of Discovery. This looks like a great pickup if you are two-hand tanking. The last option is Single-Minded Fury. While dual-wielding, you'll get a 10% bonus to physical damage and move speed. Fury dual-wield tanking generally wasn't worthwhile till later levels in Classic, so I don't think this will really be used in Phase 1. And with Devastate requiring a shield, dual-wield tanking looks like it's going to be a thing of the past. Overall, Devastate jumps out as the best option in this rune slot. Last, let's look at leg runes. Consumed by Rage gives plus 20% melee damage for 12 seconds or 12 swings after you exceed 80 Rage. This looks like it could be pretty crazy if you can reliably hang out around 80 Rage and essentially have it up at all times. I expect this one will be used a ton. Frenzied Assault will increase attack speed with two-handers by 20%. This one really just depends on how much we end up using two-handers, but it's a great pickup if you are using a two-hander. Our last option is Furious Thunder, increasing the attack speed slow of Thunderclap by 6%, increasing its threat by 50%, and allowing it to be used in any stance. This will significantly improve warrior AoE threat, but keep in mind Thunderclap is capped at only 4 targets in Classic. I'm planning to use Furious Thunder for AoE and hard-hitting bosses and swap to Consumed Rage when I don't need the extra attack speed slow or AoE threat. Now let's look at some gear. This is just an example set with gear that isn't too crazy to get. Don't focus on whether each slot has the perfect item. This is just to give a general idea of pre-raid level 25 stats. The amount of stam we'll need will depend on how much mobs and BFD are hitting for, but going in, a mix of stam, strength, and agi on all your gear should be good. If it turns out there are some things that hit crazy hard in BFD, we drop some strength in favor of stam and agi. We're looking at almost 1300 HP and 2100 armor unbuffed, and almost 1800 HP and 2700 armor buffed. Notably, it's also easy to achieve 27.4% avoidance plus block, which means that combined with shield block's 75% block, we will reach 102.4% avoidance plus block, giving us full combat table coverage and pushing both crits and crushes off the table against bosses while shield block is active. Now let's look at talents. The first build is the prot build, and the first one I'm planning to try. In the first tier of prot, we have shield specialization, giving us 5% block and granting 1 rage every time we block, and allowing us to get improved shield block later on. We also have anticipation in this tier, but it likely won't be picked up since imp shield block requires 5 points in shield spec, and there are better things than anticipation later in the tree. Anticipation will give you 0.08% dodge, parry, block, and reduced chance to be hit and crit per point. On the second tier, we have Imp Blood Rage, which isn't terribly exciting, but it unlocks Last Stand. We also have Toughness, which just gives increased armor and is always good. Iron Will increases our chance to resist stun and charm effects by 3% per point. It's really unlikely that we'd ever pick this up unless there are lots of really high impact stuns in BFD. The third tier of prot has Last Stand and extremely good defensive cooldown that gives us 30% increased health for 20 seconds. However, the cooldown is 10 minutes in Classic, so you really don't get to use it a ton compared to Wrath. We will not have Shield Wall in Phase 1, so this is our only available defensive cooldown. Improved Shield Wall is great to put a single point in, as it will give 1 extra block when you use Shield Block. The increased duration portion of it is pretty meaningless, but the extra block is invaluable. As discussed earlier, we will have enough passive avoidance and block for Shield Block to push crits and crushes off the table while Shield Block is active. Since Shield Block has a 5-second cooldown, this will allow you to be crit and crush immune for 2 attacks every 5 seconds, which is really strong. Depending on the boss attack speed and how often they stop to cast things, this could potentially make you crit/crush immune to all of their attacks. Improved Revenge will give a chance when you revenge to stun the target for 3 seconds. This could be useful if BFD has ad fights with harder hitting but stunnable ads. Lastly, we've got Defiance, which just increases their threat generated, always a good thing. If you find you're in more need of survivability than threat, you could move the Defiance points into Toughness or Deflection and Arms to get extra parry chance, or you could put all 4 points into Deflection. This next build is a Fury build, which would be more suited for an off tank. On the first tier, you can pick up 5% crit from Cruelty, which is just always good. The other option is Booming Voice, which increases the AoE and duration of Battle Shout and Demo Shout by 10% per point, which isn't really necessary. On the second tier, you can get Imp Demo Shout to improve Imp Demo Shout by 40%. At this level, this will be another 36 attack power reduction for 91 total. This is a great pickup if mobs hit pretty hard in BFD. The other option is Unbridled Wrath, which gives a chance to generate an extra point of rage when dealing melee damage. This is okay, but it's not good enough to justify dropping Imp Demo Shout unless the mobs in BFD do no damage. On the third tier, we can pick up Imp Battle Shout to increase the AP of our whole party, which is great since most or all of our group should benefit from Battle Shout in a raid setting. Blood Craze heals us for a small amount after being crit, but it's a pretty negligible amount, so I can't see spending points on this. Piercing Howl is a situationally amazing ability. It will slow all mobs around you by 50% for 6 seconds, allowing you to kite anytime you need to. Being able to just choose to stop taking damage at any time by kiting the mobs is just insanely valuable. It will just depend how many mobs in BFD are slowable. Improved Cleave is another option that will just increase the bonus damage on Cleave. It's decent if you're cleaving a lot, but I can't see us taking it with our limited talent points. With our final point, we can pick up Enrage. This spec will be getting crit a lot since it won't have enough combat table coverage to become crit immune with shield block, and even if it did, shield block would only have 1 charge. So you should have a decent uptime on Enrage, and it would also allow you to use Raging Blow if you want. So what spells will you even have at level 25? Here's a list of everything you'll have. We do have the main things we need to tank effectively. We'll have plenty of abilities to generate threat, both an attack power and attack speed debuff, and an interrupt. Disarm could also be situationally useful too. Some of the notable spells we'll be missing are Challenging Shout, Shield Wall, Berserker Stance, Berserker Rage, and Intercept. So where do Prot Warriors fit into the tanking landscape at level 25? I think Prot Warriors will be the best single target tanks in Phase 1. We'll be able to really cut down on the amount of crit and crushing blows through Imp Shield Block, which will be really important if bosses hit hard. We'll also bring our own attack power and attack speed debuffs, whereas other tanks will be relying on others. On top of all that, we get 10% reduced damage taken from defensive stance and a great defensive cooldown, last stand, to save us. Prot Warrior's single target threat should be really good, but I also expect every tank in SOD will do plenty of single target threat, so this probably won't really be a defining feature. Thanks to Furious Thunder, AoE threat for smaller AoE pulls should be good, and with Warbringer we'll have great mobility when we need it. Bratward to me looks like it'll be great, and I'm really excited to play it in Season of Discovery. If you'd like to check out some SOD tank gameplay, I stream most days at twitch.tv/subtlefw, and I'll be streaming a ton of SOD. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.